Okay, so we're going to talk about the rehab protocol for a pulley injury. So the pulley injury, it's not always the pulley. It's usually a combination of the pulley plus the flexor tendon. Either way, we're going to treat this the same. Tendons, anything collagen-based, structure-wise, tissue-wise in the body, it needs load to heal, right? So this is going to be a really climbing-specific way to get some good load to the finger. Just keep in mind, depending on your pain level, depending on your strength, your baseline strength before you were injured, it's going to modify a couple of these variables here. The biggest variable that I see is sometimes you're not ready or don't feel like doing no hangs, or maybe you don't have a hangboard, but you have like a little porta edge that you can hang some weight from. That might be a good starting place. If you don't have a hangboard or it's just cost prohibitive to go buy a hangboard for this, the little porta edges are cheaper. Or if your pain levels are so high or if reactive to where you need to start with much less weight. And with a no hang, the problem with a no hang, or basically a hang where your feet are on the ground and you're just kind of like sinking your weight into it, sometimes it's harder to get the same exact amount of load every no hang, right? Because you're going by feel. So those are going to be some different variables you may have to play with. And just keep in mind that this protocol it is meant to have you start where you're at. You're going to start with monitoring symptoms and basing the intensity off of symptoms. Whereas over time, as symptoms go down, we want to end in a place where we're using more intensity and fatigue to dictate how hard we're working when we're hanging, okay? Because we ultimately need to get to a place where we're trying really hard with this so that we stimulate the right collagen genesis and adaptation in the tissues to get where you want to be, okay? And to actually facilitate the healing we want. So with all that being said, we'll talk about this protocol here. And before we talk about the protocol, we are going to talk about the pain monitoring model or rules around what's okay and what's not with symptoms. So it's just a simple dichotomy of, is this discomfort or symptoms that you're feeling, is it acceptable or is it unacceptable? And that's it, that's all that matters. And so that definition of unacceptable, if we were using a numerical pain rating scale, 1 to 10, how much does it hurt? I would say unacceptable for most people is usually around that like 4 or 5 out of 10, okay? And so that's gonna be where you're like, yeah, this is just not, this doesn't feel good. I feel like I have to like, move, change how my fingers positioned on the board or how I'm hanging. It's just not comfortable. I'm not okay with it. It's concerning. So we don't want unacceptable levels of discomfort. If you have unacceptable levels during hanging, immediately modify so that you don't. If you get a little delayed reaction of it later, you just want to make sure that you let it calm down, and then the next time you hang, you reflect on maybe what was too much last time, and you modify the next time you do it and monitor again. Okay, it takes a little bit of trial and error sometimes. And so if here's baseline, your baseline symptoms. It's okay to have an increase in symptoms during hangs or during a rehab exercise in general, as long as it's an acceptable amount. It's not an unacceptable amount. If it's acceptable and then it returns back to baseline within about 24 to 36 hours, you're golden. And that will allow you the ideal prescription, which is every other day loading or a minimum of 3 times per week for something like this. With that sort of coming back down to baseline during that time frame, it also allows for that being at baseline every time you do this. Okay, so that's how that works. Is there anything else with the pain monitoring that you guys should know? Nope, I think I addressed all of that. So we're going to talk about the protocol itself. The protocol is based off of what some of you may know as a max hang protocol, where the edge stays constant. The only variable that we're changing, or the independent variable, is going to be the amount of hanging that we're doing. So body weight versus adding weight to our body to make this harder over time. We don't want to increase difficulty by decreasing the edge size. We always want to use a 20 millimeter or approximately pad size edge when we are doing this, and we always want to have a half or open crimp. I typically tell people to try it, if you feel it more open, I would hang open. If you feel it more half, I would hang half. I try not to do anything that's really like a kind of a closed crimp or full crimp, and definitely don't involve that thumb. okay? We don't want to do that. We want to definitely be more towards half crimp or open crimp. There's nothing wrong with full crimp or closed crimping. It's just for the rehab purposes, this gives us a little bit more of a controlled environment to progress the hangboarding with, okay? So all of that being said, the protocol itself is going to be a 12-second hang, 12 seconds, and then resting for 2.5 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, okay? 5 of those makes a set, okay? The rest of the protocol, you can see the PDF, or maybe I can actually attach it in this video if I get really fancy, and you can pause it and look at it. But the number of sets that you're going to do is going to increase over time. And so it's just something to kind of track over time. The only thing that's going to change is the amount of weight that you're doing with each hang is going to go up. And then the amount of sets that you're doing over time is going to go up. Keep in mind that hangboarding can be a very kind of like tedious, like time-consuming process. So I definitely encourage you to maximize your time by using your rest periods to do other exercises. You don't want to twiddle your thumbs while you're resting, so do some lower body or other upper body. If you're going to do lower body, if you're doing really heavy like deadlifts or anything else that's going to impede the recovery of your fingers in between sets, try and avoid that. Otherwise, everything's fair game. If you are going to be climbing that day, which isn't always a bad idea, it just depends on your rehab plan. Just make sure that your climbing is after your hangboarding, not conversely. You don't want to climb and then do the hangboarding rehab protocol. So last thing I'll just confirm with you guys is the intensity of the hanging. So if you are just starting out, you're in more of what we call a graded exposure phase, then you are going to use symptoms to guide. You're going to hang as intensely as you can within the symptoms that you're okay with and within the symptom behavior that is behaving appropriately. As that improves, you move towards what we call the progressive overload phase. In progressive overload, you're going to want to get closer and closer to a certain level of fatigue or overall fatigue during these hangs. Ideally, you are working up to and spending a couple of weeks, a number of weeks at this protocol at a point where you are hanging for 12 seconds, where 15 seconds would have otherwise been like a maximum. Okay, so eventually you're going to have to maybe add some weight on your harness or a weight belt and hang with increasing amounts of weight so that when you hit 12 seconds, you're like, whoa, I would have only been able to hold that for 15 seconds. That's how intense it should be, okay? Let me know if you have questions.